scared of having difficult conversations with somebody? And are you that type of person, like I am, that gets nervous and starts procrastinating crucial confrontations? And do you ever become flustered just by thinking about these things? Well, you're not alone. You're not only not alone, but you're also not alone in being that person who stammers and stutters and fumbles in such situations. And that's actually just human nature. Actually, because we're all people pleasers by design. But just imagine if there were scientifically proven steps and techniques that you and I could use just to make ourselves more sure sounding, just to make ourselves more confident in our approach of controlling those difficult scenarios. Wouldn't that be great? Today, our guest is going to empower us with those techniques. I'm Gurmeet Singh Shahpuri, and I'm a business turnaround coach, and I'm proud to be hosting today's Seekh Talks. And I'm so thrilled to introduce today's guest. Now, she is an army child who uses the charm of the olive greens to help people create that impactful first impression, that type of first impression that's supposed to last. Now, she studied clinical research from Cranfield University and has led a career in healthcare for over 10 years in companies like Johnson & Johnson and Avengen and many others. Now, 8 years ago, she discovered her passion was actually personifying people. And since then, she has led workshops on executive presence, likability, and difficult conversations. Now, her client list includes the Boston Consulting Group, KPMG, Coca-Cola, eBay, and so many more. And she aims to simplify communications for people in just ways that that helps borders dissolve and communities thrive. And she is the one and the only Mira Swarup. Welcome, Mira, to Seekh Talks. It's such an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much, Gurraj. It is an equal privilege and honor and an absolute pleasure to be interviewing with you. I absolutely love it when you're across the screen and I get this opportunity. Thank you.
All right. And the pleasure. Welcome, viewers. A pleasure to have you guys here too. And thanks for taking your valuable time to be here. You're going to get a lot of learnings today on how to be confident in those difficult talks. By the way, I'm so happy that we're on the Seekh Talks platform. Seekh Talks is an initiative by the Sikh Chamber of Commerce and Samir Singh. And Mira, tell us, what are the key things that our viewers are going to take away from today's talk?
Absolutely. That's what I'm looking forward to. What are the key takeaways? They will know how is it that I can have a difficult conversation without offending the other person. That's number one. Second, how can they smoothly glide into a difficult conversation where they're not so stopped by their own hesitations and be able to walk into it?
Yes.
The third would be a conversation around what are the kind of words that would make an impact in a difficult conversations and what are the kind of words you must totally avoid. And the fourth that we're going to cover, which is the bonus, is what is it or what is the science of being able to give feedback as well as receive feedback, which will play a major role here. Yes.
So we're going to leave that one till the end because we want everybody to stick around. Now, I'll tell you how important these things are in today's world because, I'm a business coach and I'm seeing so many of my clients having to have these conversations because this is where they have to tell people, look, we can't continue with you because of this lockdown. This is where they have to tell their teams that it's so hard for me to say this, but no more bonuses this year, guys. Or they're saying things like, all those increments that I promised you, they're actually not going to happen this year. This is a difficult time because people are even having to tell their kids, little kids don't always understand. They don't understand because they don't understand what's going on. So imagine telling a little child that, Beta, we're not going to have your birthday. Or imagine, and another thing that's happening a lot is husband wives are actually going at each other. And these conversations are pretty difficult nowadays. So I hope you're going to give us some good tips on the husband-wife relationship as well and tips to have conversations with our spouses as well. Is that going to be today's game plan as well?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing it out just the way you did, Gurraj, because the minute we are in uncertain times, just like COVID right now, the minute that uncertainty rises, the need to converse, the need to be able to discuss, have a dialogue versus be fighting at each other becomes all the more important. If this is the limitation in which you're going to thrive, conversations will get difficult and we need to succeed at them. So yes.
Wonderful. So the time is perfect. Okay, so Mira and guests, the rules of engagement are as follows. Mira, I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions. And viewers, over the next 45 minutes, Mira and I are going to do our job by giving you some hard-hitting thoughts and ideas and solutions, lots of solutions today, that the world's best authors have come up with and the best that the net has to say. And Mira has compiled it all for us today. And viewers, your job is going to be to drop in your questions and the real scenarios that you're facing. And I'm going to put them on the screen so Mira can get into those things. Okay, Mira, the last question I'm going to ask you the first question I'm going to ask you before we get started with the real questions is, are you ready?
Absolutely. Ready to go.
Good. And viewers, if you're ready, you can start throwing your questions on the screen and I'll start putting them up. Okay, Mira, the first thing is that though it's quite self-explanatory, the title, what really makes difficult conversations difficult? And what does it have to take place in a conversation to be able to define it as a difficult conversation?
Fantastic. I'm so glad you asked that, Gurraj, because it'll help us set context for our viewers to, have I been walking into difficult conversations and not realizing that they are difficult? Because this is going to be like value for them to instantly break down. So a difficult conversation is anything that makes you anxious, has a certain amount of emotions involved in it, has a history because there is another party involved and there's something that goes back. It is the kind of conversations which have high stakes and it is uncertain conditions in which you're looking for some success to happen. In a nutshell, I would say it is those that we know we must have and we hesitate to, and it is those that require us to bring our best forward. So it is, yes, this is what I would define difficult conversations. Giving you a few is firing people. It's asking your spouse for accountability on expenses. It is asking a friend, a flatmate to help out with the chores. It's asking your child what will it take for them to power up their performance. It's all of these.
Okay, good. Now, are there some types of people that are more reluctant about difficult conversations? And are there certain types of people that actually lean behind or lean out of such conversations, or are there people that actually lean into these conversations? Basically, what I'm asking is this easier for some people than it is for others? And of course, I know what the answer is, but what is the science behind this?
Wow, lovely. I'm glad you know the answer because I'd love to know from you too, because I'm still researching on this. I am. There's a whole mixed bag of pieces of information that I'm bringing in. Some people are inclined towards it depending on the kind of environment and upbringing that they've had. That means if they have been in an environment where speaking up, speaking about what matters to you, shouting out for what's not okay is okay, and at the end of it, they'll all go out for dinner. They may not have carried out the difficult conversation very well, yet they know, okay, it's done with, now let's move on. And there are some who come from places where people don't open up, speak up, they shove it under the carpet, and then conversations don't get addressed. So depending on your upbringing and what you're conditioned to believe is where people approach it from. And then yet again, I feel it further categorizes, it could categorize into different spaces because somebody might find it impossible to say no, whereas for somebody else, it might be the easiest thing. And then that same person for whom it's easy to say no might find it difficult to tell somebody you don't have a job anymore. And then for somebody who it might be easy to say, okay, I don't have a job. You don't have a job anymore. It's not a fun conversation, but it's a conversation I can have. Yet that person might find it difficult to seek any support from their spouse. So it's a multitude. But what do you think? I'd like to know from you.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you from an industrial psychology point of view, because there are tests. There's behavior tests and there's personality tests. And I think this has a lot to do with both, because personality in the long term defines our behavior, and our behavior is a choice. But if you look at a person like Donald Trump, I don't think he has any problem with crucial or difficult conversations. He's a straight shooter. He shoots from the hip, no problem at all, because he generally is a very domineering person. Now I'm going to get into the theory of DISC a little bit for a quick second, because in DISC, there's 4 types of people: the domineering people, the influencers, and then the people who are actually, the people who are subdued. They're not confrontational. And I think a lot of us land in those categories. We're just non-confrontational people. And what happens is, because behavior is a choice, we can all learn certain techniques to become a certain type of behavior. And I think we're going to talk a lot about that here, is what are the choices we have to make with our words. I hope you're going to tell us a lot of one-liners and phrases. But because people are born the way they are, and then they have that ability to transcend many types of personality and behavior types, I think it is possible. But there are natural dispositions. Kei log hote hain, even in a certain house, you might have 2 or 3 kids, even in our own home, where I was always a type when my parents used to be fighting, I used to want to go and hide. And I remember one of my siblings would like, "Bhar mein jao, lado, maro, jo marzi karo. I know these guys aren't getting divorced." And then, that's 2 different opinions in one house. So I think that through DISC and through MBTI and stuff like that, we can probably arrive at it. But today, we want to get right to the solution. So I'm so glad you're here with us. Okay, by the way, for our viewers who are just tuning in, Mira and I are talking about having difficult conversations, and she's going to tell us the art and science behind how to tackle them head on so you're never nervous in such situations. Okay, so Mira, ek cheez batao. How does one decode a difficult conversation, and is there a construct that one can use to dismantle and see the road ahead?
Absolutely. So how does one deconstruct, literally look at it section wise, that what is a difficult conversation made of? This is what I'm going to help answer. A difficult conversation is primarily 3 buckets. And I invite all of you viewers to pick one difficult conversation that you are meaning to have or that you have recently been through, because when you split it into these 3 buckets, you will start to see the reality of it. Okay. Any difficult conversation has 3 buckets. The first one is the story. And let me tell you what the story is. The story is literally what you're speaking in your mind about, what happened, what is happening, and what should happen. Mind the word, you're saying what should happen because that's your expectation. And this story, where you're talking about, what am I right about? Whose fault is it? And what is the other person's motive or intention behind having done it?
Right.
If each one of us can get this first bucket right, the story of what happened, what is happening, what should happen, what am I right about?
Yes.
Whose fault is it? And what is the intention and motive of the other person? If you can start to section this out, you just saw your whole story get deconstructed right in front of you.
Yes.
Then comes the second bucket, which is the feelings bucket, which is extremely essential for us to acknowledge. What are the feelings that we are dealing with in this entire situation? Am I feeling lonely? Am I feeling embarrassed? Am I feeling upset? And I encourage you to go beyond happy, sad, angry, upset. Try to go more beyond. Am I experiencing being ignored? Am I experiencing being abandoned? Yeah. This plays a major role in what are the feelings or the thoughts in your head about how you feel clear. And the third bucket, which is we call the identity. Identity takes a little while for people to unravel, but if I could give it to you in one phrase, what is it that you make it mean about yourself in that situation? Do you make yourself mean that you are a loser? Do you make yourself mean that you can't really do this? There's some form of a label that you end up putting on yourself that this is your identity and that's your space in that difficult conversation. If people can deconstruct their difficult conversation on these 3 levels, this understanding allows them to separate from it and then be able to act a little more with choice.
Now, speaking of choice, and I'm going to dig a little deeper into what you said, you spoke about identity and blame. Now, tell us then, Mira, how does one move away from a conversation about those questions about who is right? Because these can be so damaging.
Absolutely. Now, when we're talking about blame, when we're talking about identity, so let me address blame first. Blame comes from the first bucket because we have a story built around this entire conversation, whether we're going to have it or it already happened. Yes. Blame is a place where you are so clear about who's right about it, because you're clearly putting the blame on somebody for not having done what is the right to do. And if you can begin to see that it is only and only your perspective, it is not the other person's perspective.
Yes.
That helps. So moving away from who's right to what is the other person thinking. That means if we can start shifting from what is the right thing to do versus I wonder what happened with that person that he did this. Oh, I wonder what this other person is currently dealing with. That's the
Yes.
path from blame to, what is happening on the other side. And the second part, you spoke about identity, which is like the crazy space to play in. A lot of people don't instantly identify with what is their identity. This is like a little giveaway that I want to give to people about, confronting what is it that you are seeing. What do you see yourself as in that difficult conversation? When you are going to go pitch, we need to cut salaries.
Yeah.
Do you vision yourself to be a slayer? Is that how you're envisioning yourself?
No.
And that starts to become associated with your identity, right?
Yeah.
Or you start to associate yourself with, no, I'm a very kind person. I don't do these things. And then because you've labeled yourself as a kind person, you will stop opportunities to be able to pick yourself and say, hey, this is an action that is not defining who I am. This is an action that is being taken after a lot of consideration.
Yes.
So can I untangle it and see it separately? That's what I meant.
Actually a very good point, because I've had to have these conversations, and I've actually had to train people in how to have these conversations. And you're right, people do feel like slayers. And without actually thinking about it, I was telling them, look, you have to defend like a mother and fight like a father for your company, because otherwise, if you're not able to make those hard choices, then you know what, you're losing it all. You're going to lose it all in a few months down the line if this lockdown continues. So go and defend your company, go and fight for your company. And people have had that approach. So I really like this, that if we can envision ourselves in a certain role, that's going to be awesome. Now tell me, what are some more steps then that help us prepare to get into before we get into those difficult conversations? And just by the way, I'm going to tell our viewers who have just tuned in, because I see some new names coming up, that we are having a deep conversation with Mira about difficult conversations. And we're having a couple of funny comments coming in. In fact, I want to put one up on the screen right now. Koplin is saying that, is it normal that she gets excited when there's going to be a difficult conversation? So I think that's a unique person there. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But so, Mira, I was asking you, give us some more tips and techniques and steps that help us prepare for those difficult conversations.
Absolutely. So, Guraj, the level of preparation is primarily two. The first level is to qualify. Do you even want to have that conversation? Because I believe life is just too short to have all the conversations.
Yeah. Okay, Athena, pick your battles. Pick your battles.
Thank you. Pick your battles precisely. And then the way to instantly evaluate, do I even get into this conversation, is primarily asking yourself two questions. What is it that I hope to accomplish from this conversation?
Yes.
And how much does this matter for me? If you can answer these questions truly, and let me give you an example.
Yeah.
For instance, I was speaking with a friend, and my friend was very upset with a common friend of ours because she felt that she had been betrayed, and she did not like how she was treated. So I was advising my friend about how she could approach the situation, go to this other person who she feels betrayed by, and ask her, tell her, I feel hurt, and I'd like to understand how this happened. And then my friend says, Mira, I don't feel like she's a friend anymore.
Achha.
And I'm wondering if it's even worth the effort.
Yeah.
And then that just threw some light on that subject. All right. So if the experience is that the person is not a friend anymore, and you have the capacity to let go of it without hanging on to it,
yes.
then probably that difficult conversation doesn't need to happen. So that's one qualifier. That are you clear? Do you want to have it or not? And the reason we are saying no, negating it, is not because it's useless, it won't work. We're negating it that we don't want to have it because I choose to not have it. I don't find it necessary because there's nothing that I want to progress in that area.
Yeah,
that's how. And the second one that I'd like to share is that you prepare for a difficult conversation by being very clear about whoever you are approaching.
Yes.
And it may not be applicable across all conversations, yet for difficult conversations that are between relationships that matter to us, whether it's with our employees, our colleagues, our family, where it really matters, you might
Yeah.
want to really see how have you consciously invested in that relationship. Do you have anything to say that you have contributed to a certain great or a great extent to that relationship that gives you the leverage to have that conversation, that gives you the space to step up and say, knowing the fact we've been friends for 10 years, I wonder what made you do that. That's the space I'm asking about. Yeah, what do you think?
No, I think this is pretty deep stuff, but I have a question then. मेरा सवाल ये है that you spoke about the construct of difficult conversations and you said the word the associated feelings. Now, there's in my mind there's a debate about this because I don't want to be perceived as too sensitive. And because whenever we talk about feelings and feelings, because feelings is a clear tactic in conversations, then how does one handle, especially when you get blamed to be too sensitive? You're being melodramatic, Gulraj. You're being too sensitive. Then I'm stuck.
Absolutely. And thank you for saying that. You said two fantastic words. The minute somebody says you're too sensitive,
Yes.
it lands like blame, right? And then you experience being stuck. Do you notice that even when somebody, so let me give you a little piece of research. Research states that how one experiences how a conversation has gone, how reactive do they feel in the conversation, how many feelings sprout up, can range to up to 3,000%. So it's a huge range. So I don't know who we are judging against and what are we judging against. So usually when somebody says you're too insensitive, or somebody says, oh, you're too oversensitive.
Yeah.
It's a blame because they are comparing with, oh, you're a little too oversensitive than I am, or as I expected you to be, basis what I did.
Yeah.
Now, if that research hits hard, it's very important for us to understand. People can state that as a statement to deflect from where the conversation really needs to head. It's a blame, and it's like saying, hey, you know what? It's actually your fault because you're the one who's overreacting.
Yeah, you're sensitive. Yeah, it's with you. It's an issue. You're just a sissy. What do you do?
Absolutely. And I believe one of the best responses to be able to come back from there and says, well, that may be true that I may be responding or reacting a little too much compared to how you believed I should be.
Yeah.
And the fact is that even though you have been my manager for 3 years, yet I don't see why you are saying this to me. Or yet I don't see why you are holding, yet I don't see why I haven't gotten promoted as yet. So it's a conversation where you separate. Yes, I agree that I may come across as being a little too oversensitive compared to how you feel it must be. Yes. And I still have a discussion to do with you because it matters. Very essential. Please join these two things with the word and.
And yes, not but, lekin or agar or anything like that. And because otherwise, you know what? Honestly, this is very passive aggressive. But as soon as you put the word and in there, it's easily digestible. It's a good technique there.
Putting it together. Yes.
Love it. Okay. Now, one of the problems a lot of us are facing, and I'm not saying I'm facing it today, but hota hai, is marriage, because it's hard sometimes. It's hard. I need you to give us and our viewers some awesome tips about having these difficult conversations in the construct of marriage. Give us some tips on that.
Absolutely. I would love to give you this one tip that I consciously use myself. And would love to give, and it's not just applicable for marriages, it's applicable for any difficult situation that you're facing. But before that, allow me to share a little fact that might throw some light into the role of difficult conversations in marriages.
Yeah.
The first thing, this is research done by John Gottman, and I'm happy to quote him within details later, is so it is believed that a 5:1 interaction ratio of 5 positive interaction to 1 negative interactions is a recommended ratio for marriages to have a happy, successful experience. So somebody said, okay, if that's true, then doesn't like a 10:1 ratio make it better? Like, shouldn't we all be aiming at, let's just have more positive interactions and let's just keep it all very hunky dory and have one interaction out of the lump that is not so great? And John Gottman states, as much as we'd like to believe a 10:1 ratio would work for you, but 10:1 ratio is where we begin to see that it's those relationships that begin to then crumble because what needed to be spoken about didn't come up. And that's the facade that we end up playing around with ourselves. So no one's asking you to pull out your guns and go into a World War II right now.
Yeah.
Yet can we be aware that do we want to brush everything under the carpet? What is the experience of the marriage when things that matter are not coming up? Yeah. And I'm sharing this from a space of, so I help run a course where we've helped women be able to communicate more effectively about money with the men in their life. This is an association.
That's a tricky issue and an inflection point.
Yeah. Precisely. This is an association with women on wealth, and some really different conversations come up. So the tool that I want to give to our viewers here to see, hey, how can I be in a space where I can start to create the conversation? How can I create a space where I can enter the conversation and even start talking about it? This is what I want to give to you. Can we move away from who's right to how have I contributed to this? Now, who's right could be, oh, he's just so stuck up. I can never talk about our investments and future with him. That's one conversation. And you have made yourself right and him wrong. Or can you move to, how have I contributed to where the situation is today? What have I done or failed to do that it has arrived to where it has today?
Yeah.
And often stating this contribution is a great start off in a difficult conversation.
Yes.
Like, while I see that you're making all the effort to help run this project, I see that I myself am facing challenges in keeping up with the timelines.
Yes.
And I want to ask you, what is it that the company is doing so that we get more funds to be able to speeden up what's happening in the background?
Yes.
So it's start with what you are contributing to in terms of where you may be falling short. It gives you a space to further ask, hey, what about that?
Absolutely. That's a good point. Now, I'm in talks with Mira. We are talking about how to have those crucial conversations, how to have those difficult conversations. And I've asked the viewers to put up some of their questions as well. So, Mira, we have a question by Gurmeet who's asking, how do we handle the situation or a conversation where the other person already has strong preconceived notions about you or against you, rather?
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that question, Gurmeet. I think that's lovely because I'm hoping you're coming from a space of an observation where you're stopping and saying, I believe this is what the person thinks about me, yet I invite you. The rules of difficult conversations is, can you step in with an intention of wanting to walk into conflict? And the second is, I don't know anything. The second rule is, I don't know anything. That means that if you have to assume, will assume only positive intentions. Apart from that, you will leave the floor open for the other person to share where they're coming from. So that means it could be, hey, I wanted to speak about this with you. Is this a good time? The person says yes. I wanted to speak about this with you. What do you think? And the person might respond, oh, well, it's your fault. You shouldn't have done it. It's completely. How you respond to that person in that moment, the script, the tools that I want to give you is what's going to change your game. If in that conversation, you can help acknowledge how the person feels, and you can help acknowledge what the person needs, literally these two things, you have the ability to open up a space where the person may be willing to listen to what you have to say. So it's essential that you first have that person speak more, tell more. How will you get there? Dig for the feeling, dig for the need. And then you have a space where you can speak more. Yeah.
Perfect. No, I'm glad. And I need you now, Mira, because you've told us some do's. I want you to dig into some of the don'ts, some of the no go zones about difficult conversations, because we tend to make mistakes all the time. So, why not learn from the pro so that we don't fall in those obvious pitfalls that are going to get us stuck there and we're not going to be able to move on? Tell us what those pitfalls are and how to not get into those.
Thank you, Gurraj. And Gurraj, while you've called me a pro at this, I want to share. I make
Anji.
mistakes myself. It's an everyday learning,
Yeah.
and it is through experience that I'm sharing with you where I realize the worst damage ends up happening. The damage ends up happening where we might start to have a conversation that's looking to go somewhere, and then we say statements like, you always do this. So the
Yeah.
word always. The word always negates the possibility of it ever having gone right. You never do this. That's the second one. Like the word never completely cuts out the possibility of anything ever gone. So you always do this, you never do this. And also, when we state things like, this is what should happen, versus, I believe it'll work really well when this happens. Now, I believe it'll work really well when this happens is you're stating a very tactful opinion, and you're not shoving it in their face that, hello, this is it. This is the ultimate truth, and there is nothing else that needs to happen apart from this. So always, never, should. The fourth, which I'd really like to say, please don't put your butt into people's faces. And what do I mean by that? Let me clarify.
Please clarify that.
When someone's giving us feedback's a very sensitive place to be. Most difficult conversations involve feedback. And when somebody's saying, you never do this or you don't listen to me, I'm like, but I just did it yesterday.
Okay.
But that's not what I intended to do. But you're wrong. But you're not listening. But the but completely again negates any part.
Yeah.
Instead acknowledge. Could you instead like, all right. Is this what you're feeling? I can sense you're annoyed. Would you like more clarity? So you're dipping into the feeling, you're dipping into the need of the person, and you're saying it out loud for the conversation to progress forward.
Tell us more about the role of words, because you're telling us some pretty cool words to use and to not use. So what are some words that we should use instead of but? And just generally the role of words, and what are some of those key words that are actually going to get us off the hook when we've screwed up, or that are going to help with these conversations to go more smoothly?
Absolutely. Another phrase that I would recommend that we don't do, and I'm happy to give an alternate to that. A phrase that we say is when we say, you make me so upset, or that makes me so angry. When we say statements like this, we are giving our power away, because we're clearly saying, because that happened, I am angry. It's your fault that I'm angry. And that again just makes the conversation go down. Instead, could you follow a typical script I'd like to offer to you? When you say this, I feel so and so. So for instance, when you said I'm useless at my work, I felt disappointed. Not disappointed in you. When you said I'm useless at my work, I felt disappointed.
Yes.
Can you give me some more clarity on what specifically is not working? So the power to be able to say, hey, when you said this, I feel this, it doesn't work for me. What is it that you're looking for? Is where you're progressing the conversation forward versus reacting and saying, how dare you?
Yeah.
So that's an example of the kind of phrases that one should not be using, and the kind of phrases that you can use to make your conversation move a little faster. So you say words like I believe, or what I'd like, versus another example. In fact, this is so important when we say, why are the dishes not done yet? Versus what happened that the dishes are not done yet? Why is your room still not clean? Versus what happened that the room is still not clean? So why versus what is a beautiful transfer from blaming to inquiry. That's the space.
I think that's so important and easy to remember at that too. Just what ki jagah, just what ki jagah, why, and it's so easy because then it'll force us to restructure the sentence, and when it comes out in not a negative tone but in an inquiry tone. Wow, this is great. So Mira and I are in talks about how to have difficult, crucial conversations. Thank you everybody who's tuned in. Some people are asking some cool questions. Vikas is asking, mostly we say that silence is a better tool, but to what extent? And does silence work? Because in my case, Mira, ek cheez main bataun, silence actually sets me off. If I feel that the other person isn't responding, I actually get quite bugged. But I also know that there are points where I should just be quiet and walk away. Tell us about this. What is the long and short on this?
Wow. That's a deep subject, and it's it shifts from context to context. Yet I'd like to share from my experience. Sometimes I invite you to go silent in a conversation if you can't find anything progressive to speak. If you're finding it difficult to acknowledge the person's feeling or what he's thinking because you're so caught up with how you're feeling and how you're thinking, it's turned into a murky space. I invite you to go silent. And in case the person prods you for, hey, why are you silent now?
Yeah.
One of the best responses is, I don't know what to say at this moment right now. I don't have the words. And say it in not a powerless state, but a state of power. Like you clearly don't know what will make this conversation go forward. And similarly, when we're on the other side, I invite you to have the patience for silence to be there between two people. When the other person can fall silent, you asked a question or you created a confrontation, you said something and the person went silent. Please allow them that pause. That pause could sometimes be as long as maybe a minute.
Absolutely.
And then ask.
I think then plays pause chicken, because whoever speaks first probably has something to say or probably is on the submissive tone. Now, ek cheez batao, Koplin is having a little bit of fun. She's asking us a couple of things, but she put up a comment before that she enjoys difficult conversations. Do you, Mira, do you enjoy having difficult conversations?
Okay. So if Koplin has fun having difficult conversations, Koplin, I want to say you're the lucky one. and coming from me where I am, in fact, I'd like to know from you also, Gurraj. It's not a fun conversation. I don't walk into it like, yay, today's gonna be an awesome. That's not the experience. Yet I must say, because of the awareness of the tools, awareness of this information, I certainly feel less anxious.
Yes.
More relieved, even before the conversation has started. Because whatever it is, I know that we can discuss it and sort it out. So that whole experience makes me feel less anxious. What do you think? What about you?
So, well, this is supposed to be about you, not me. But since you put me on the spot, I'll be frank. I used to be really nervous and really bad at these things, really bad at these things. But I've learned a few techniques. And one of the techniques is that whenever I have to have a difficult conversation, whether it's on the phone or in person, the first sentence out of my mouth after the initial pleasantry, and might even be the first sentence, not even the pleasantry, I'll call up somebody and I'll say, hey, Sanjeev, I'm calling about some bad news I have today. Right? I will state that first, because a lot of people say use the sandwich technique where you say something nice, then you give them the bad news, and then you sandwich it with something good. I say, well, you know what? That's a little fake. Why not just be straightforward and direct? So what's worked for me is I will say, okay, I've learned straightforward and direct works. It works for other people who are domineering. I'm not a domineering person, but if it works for them, it'll work for me. It's not easy still, Mira. It's not easy. But I'll go into the conversation with my opening line is, I have some bad news. And you know what? It goes well. because I will just open it up. And the other person is usually grateful. Hey, Guraj didn't beat around the bush. He didn't try to sugarcoat it. He didn't ask formality questions and baad mein followed up with bad news. So that's the first thing. Yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing is that I like to keep it short. I like to keep things short. And when I know, Ajkal, when I know that I'm just going to go in and my opening line is going to be about my difficult topic, it's going to be over soon. It's like that needle where the doctor has to poke you. If you just put it in context, कि एक pinch ही तो है. It's just as it's less than a pinch. If you just pinch yourself beforehand and you say सुई तो इतनी ही दर्द होएगी, then you're not afraid of the needle. So I think that's worked for me. What do you
I'm
think?
so loving the context you just created, Guraj. Can't agree with you more. The whole directness in feedback and the ability to think. I think I'm making it simpler for him if I come directly to the subject. I believe in what you've just said. This is beautiful. Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question here. How does one bring up something without offending the other person? Give us some good techniques on that.
Yeah. So as much as I said that is going to be like a major takeaway, here is how I'm giving it to you.
Okay.
There is no tactful way of throwing a grenade.
And you're an army brat, so we know you're an army child, Anji.
Yes, it is going to land. It will cause hurt. People will experience some form of dissatisfied or an anxious experience when difficult conversations are brought forward to somebody. And I'm usually speaking in the realm of feedback because that ends up happening. When the hard subjects are spoken about, you will end up offending them. Yet it is the conversation is how can you help lower the intensity so that
Yes.
people start to see the area of improvement a lot more than what was wrong. Can the conversation move towards more of, hey, how can we make this better versus this is all wrong? So that's one space. And again, I'd like to repeat something I said earlier. To be able to not offend somebody directly, what helps is if you walk into a conversation very clear that you're going to speak about your contribution in that. For instance, a manager who wants to give feedback, can he look at why did he not never give this feedback before? Can he call it out and say,
Yes.
I noticed that I never brought this up, yet I realized earlier I ignored it, thinking it's not something to worry about. And I must say that's costing me. So I want to bring it up now. That this behavior of being so loud in meetings does not work. Or this brazen way of speaking to the senior managers does not work. And I'd like us to find a way that this does not happen again. That's all.
Now, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on this, but right before that, because I don't want to leave any viewer questions out, Archana is asking, how do you tackle a poor listener?
That's a fantastic question. How do you tackle a poor listener? Now, you could be coming from two spaces. One, that person is very defensive, and that's why is not listening to anything that you have to say.
Yes.
Or the second could be that the person is very distracted and is listening, which is why not responding to the conversation progressively. For him, it's like, yeah, whatever. So coming to the first space where the person is defending and is not listening to your side of the story,
yes.
Well, I invite you to look at what part about that person has not been heard. Also, once you hear what happened, you hear the complaint, after that, can we again, I'm saying it again, can we shift the conversation to how they have contributed to where the problem is? Let me give you an example because this will help see a small example in a bigger level.
Yes.
Two children in the house. One children comes back running to mommy and saying, he hit me. Bada bhaiya hit me.
Yeah.
And the mommy looks at and says, okay, do you want to tell me what happened just before he hit you? Now she's inviting him into a conversation of bringing it up. Beta, how did you contribute to the conversation? Or how did you even contribute to that violence? What is it that you did? And I'd like to understand. And then he can go on and say, but he hit me and that's not right, and but this is just not done, etc., etc., quite like the boardroom conversations. But he said this, but he said that, etc.
Quite like the boardroom.
Quite like the boardroom, exactly. So again, in that conversation, what can we do to acknowledge and say, I am sure it must hurt. It's certainly not a great experience. And of course, we'll attend to it and we will look after it. And I want you to tell me what happened. Could you tell me the whole thing? What happened right before he hit you?
Yes.
So our ability to listen, acknowledge the other person's feelings, especially the one who's on this defensive role, acknowledge their feeling, understand. I understand that you need a non-violent atmosphere. I understand that you need more support from the team. I understand that you need more time to get this done. I understand your need. And I still want to understand what made you send that email out. So building the conversation from, hey, can you see how much of an impact it is? Driving the conversation to the impact of what happened is what allows the difficult conversation to progress forward. If we don't talk about the impact, it often gets shoved under the carpet. So impact.
Now, Mira, you are so incredible at this because you are an impact communication coach. So who better to ask about this? Now, you told us that we're going to have a surprise bonus at the end where we're going to learn how to give bad news. And you've already helped us with that. Now, because we're nearing the end of our segment, tell us how we can receive bad news, because you had promised you were going to tell us that.
Okay, so I spoke about how we can give feedback and receive feedback. Are you referring to the same question? Because it wasn't specifically.
Kind of. Because
okay, got it. Because feedback would be negative.
Yeah.
Yes.
When we are being bombarded, how do we walk away from that without being hurt?
Yeah. Beautiful. I like that. So how do we receive it? How do we receive it in a way where it allows us to move forward? All right. So it is difficult for people to receive feedback, and allow me to explain the science of it a little. There are primarily 3 triggers that show up when people are receiving feedback.
Yeah.
The triggers could be in these three steps, or not steps, but 3 independent ways where these triggers show up. So when somebody gives you feedback of any form, you instantly might go into a trigger of what we call the truth trigger.
Yes.
Where you're instantly checking, is this even correct? Did this even happen? What is the credibility of what is being said, and what is the credibility of the person who's saying it? So it's a space where we've got to confront our blind spots, which apparently I don't have any, but you have all of them. So that conversation about knowing, what is it that I don't know about myself, and do I have the power to be able to look at it? So that's one, the first trigger that happens. The second trigger that ends up happening is the relationship trigger. That means, who is the person who's giving you the feedback? What is the relationship that you have with them? The typical drama that tends to happen is like, oh, so my mother-in-law is advising me about baby care, versus your friend advised you about baby care and you took it well.
Yeah.
So who is it coming from also makes a difference in how are you wired? How are you receiving this information?
Yes.
Third aspect is the identity trigger, which again, like we spoke a little earlier, when somebody gives you that feedback, what do you make it mean about yourself? Do you end up saying, oh, damn, I'm terrible? Or do you make it mean like, oh, I'm not good enough, I just never get it? Or do you make it mean like something that you label yourself, and that starts to crumble your identity? So if our viewers can get this aspect right, it allows them to instantly dissect and look at every feedback that you get or will fall into these categories.
Yes.
And if you can identify this, you can start to separate yourself from the drama.
Yes.
That gives one part of the power. The second part of the power that I want to be able to give to people is, sometimes they want feedback, but they just don't know how to get it.
Yes.
They don't know how to get it in a way, because it's a human need. It's a human need that we want to learn, we want to develop, we want to grow, and at the same time we don't want to be offended. It's like just at a space where there is a lot of chaos that's happening inside of us. Yet one of the most powerful ways where you can start to get feedback is get specific about what is it that you want feedback on. Get specific about who do you want the feedback from.
Yes.
So for instance, your colleague walks up to your manager because that's the person he wants to get the feedback from, and the questions to ask is, specifically again, it could be in my performance, or it could be on this project. What is it that you would like me to stop doing that I am already doing? What is it that you would like me to start doing that I'm not doing? And what is it that you'd like me to continue doing that I'm already doing? So start, stop, continue.
Continue.
This allows people to just jump in and say, now I am ready to go have a more specific, effective, meaningful conversation about my career, my future, this is a conversation you can have with your partner.
You have nailed it for me. You have nailed it for me, because the start, stop, and continue, I think those are super, super tools. Mira, ek cheez batao. What would be some next actions for our viewers? Where could they get more of this? Are there any books or any things that you could recommend that people could read on the net or otherwise offline?
Yes, so I have given the links forward already, and I would like to highly recommend this book called Difficult Conversations by Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, Sheila Heen. The links are below. I'd also like to recommend reading Crucial Conversations, because that's
so difficult conversations and crucial conversations.
Yes, certainly. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, so awesome of you to be here. A big thank you, Mira. Thank you for being part of our program. It was so wonderful that you took the time to come online with us. If the viewers want to get more of Mira, or if they have any questions, please, I put the email address below. You can mail Mira, and Mira's usually pretty good at answering her emails, because usually when I press send, she answers me back within about 24 hours anyway. So thank you, Mira, once again for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gulraj. And I really want to say thank you to you. Thank you to Seekh Talks for creating a platform where people can walk in to consciously learn. It's splendid what you're creating here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And Seekh Talks is made possible by Samir Singh and the Sikh Chamber of Commerce. And we are being streamed live on 3 Facebook pages and 2 YouTube channels. And if you enjoyed today's talk, because I know I did, please give us a big thumbs up and do write a comment. I look forward to reading some of those comments. Now, forward this talk, because you're going to get an offline link to it later on as well. Forward it to somebody you think that could benefit by having a better knowledge of how to have difficult conversations. And if you love today's talks, do subscribe to the Facebook channel or the YouTube page so you get more of these talks and you know when we're going live. Now, next time we're going to be speaking to Wing Commander RPS Sodhi. So join me tomorrow at 4 p.m. because he's one of our nation's heroes. He's a veteran from the armed force and currently a helicopter pilot flying missions to remote areas, flying crucial supplies and doing search and rescue operations in this lockdown. You do not want to miss it. I'm Gulraj Singh Shahpuri. It was my pleasure to host you today. I'll be here tomorrow, same time, same place. I'm going to catch you tomorrow. Hope to see you everybody then. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.